We are more medicated, distracted, and connected than any generation in history. And yet, rates of anxiety, addiction, and apathy are soaring. Could it be that what we call mental health crises are, at their core, signals of a deeper spiritual starvation? Welcome to We Have a Spiritual Problem, a podcast where we confront the deeper questions beneath our personal struggles and collective crises. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. I am not a theologian or a philosopher, or at least by training. I am a PhD exercise physiologist with an interest in the intersection of the physical and the spiritual. In this episode, I consider what I call modern malaise, the rise of anxiety, addiction, and apathy as signals of a spiritual disruption. We will explore the insights of Carl Jung, Gabor Maté, Parker Palmer, and others who help us to recognize that psychological symptoms often mask deeper spiritual hunger. We'll also connect this conversation to broader themes we've considered before: spiritual evolution, the SPIES model of human flourishing, the role of social connection, and the integration of body and spirit. My hope is that by the end, we'll not only see our struggles differently, but we'll hear them as invitations, pointing us toward healing, wholeness, and a rediscovery of meaning. We live in a paradox. On one hand, we have more medical knowledge, more psychological tools, more access to information than ever before. On the other hand, surveys consistently report skyrocketing rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Addiction is everywhere, not just substances, but to screens, to work, to consumption, to distraction. And then there's apathy. That creeping sense of indifference, of indignation, of why bother? This malaise isn't just a collection of private problems. It's cultural, systemic, and collective. When entire generations describe themselves as burned out, hopeless, or disconnected, we're not dealing with just individual pathology. We're dealing with a spiritual crisis. Anxiety is often described as a psychological overreaction of the nervous system, a misfiring of the fight-or-flight response. That's true biologically. But what does it mean spiritually? Anxiety may be the soul's way of saying you're living in disconnection. Disconnection from your body, from community, from meaning, from the ground of being. Carl Jung noticed that many of his patients in midlife weren't just anxious because of work or relationships. They were anxious because their lives had lost depth. Here we can bring in the SPIES model: spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social well-centeredness. Anxiety is often a sign that one or more of these domains has been neglected. Spiritually, we may feel cut off from transcendence. Physically, our bodies are overstimulated, under-rested, running on caffeine and cortisol. Intellectually, we are bombarded with information but starved for wisdom. Emotionally, we repress rather than process. Socially, we live in a world of digital connection, but relational famine. When one or more of these areas collapse, anxiety is almost inevitable. It's not just a medical disorder, it's a signal that our life has become fragmented. Now consider addiction. Gabor Maté insists that addiction is never the primary problem. It's always an attempt to solve a deeper pain, and often that pain is spiritual. Think of what people seek in addiction: relief from suffering, altered consciousness, a sense of belonging, even if only temporarily. These are spiritual longings. Addiction is a counterfeit liturgy. Instead of prayer, the ritual is pouring a drink. Instead of meditation, it's scrolling endlessly. Instead of communion, it's the community of fellow users. And yet, the hunger is real. Addiction reminds us that human beings are wired for transcendence. If we don't find it in healthy, grounding ways, we will reach for substitutes. Here again, the SPIE model helps. Addiction usually appears when multiple domains are undernourished: physical pain unresolved, emotional wounds unprocessed, intellectual confusion about meaning, social disconnection, and at the core, spiritual emptiness. Apathy may be the most insidious form of malaise. Anxiety still has energy. Addiction is still a search. But apathy says, why care? It is the shutting down of desire, the extinguishing of longing. Parker Palmer speaks about the hidden wholeness. Even when life feels fragmented, there remains a core of integrity within us. Apathy often means we've lost touch with that core. We no longer trust that life has meaning. This reminds me of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search of Meaning out of the horrors of the Holocaust. Frankl observed that human beings can endure incredible suffering if they can make sense of it, if they can find meaning in it. Apathy arises when meaning is gone. Without meaning, suffering crushes us instead of transforming us. This is why apathy is not simply a mood, it's a spiritual starvation. The soul giving up on hope. Whenever we talk about spirituality in the context of mental health, there's a danger, bypassing. It's the temptation to slap spiritual platitudes over real wounds. Just have more faith. Everything happens for a reason. Pray it away. Bypassing avoids pain rather than transforming it. True spirituality, however, always moves through pain. Thomas Merton once said that spirituality is not about escaping the world, it's about entering it more deeply. The only way out is through. This means that our anxiety, addiction, and apathy are not to be denied or dismissed, they are to be listened to. They are signals, not just signs of weakness. Trauma reshapes the brain and body, yes, but it also reshapes the soul. Gabor Maté says that the wound is not just where we are broken, but also where we are most open. Spiritual traditions across the world echo this. The crack is where the light gets in. The cross becomes the doorway to resurrection. The exile becomes the place of new covenant. Trauma, when integrated rather than denied, can become the soil of transcendence. Our suffering becomes the place where compassion grows, where resilience is forged, where meaning is discovered. Our society is anxious because we live in a 24/7 economy that never allows rest. We are addicted because consumer capitalism thrives on stimulating desire without fulfillment. We are apathetic because we have lost a shared story of meaning, a sense of belonging to something larger. Teilhard de Chardin spoke of humanity as evolving toward an omega point, a convergence in consciousness. But right now, it feels like we are stuck. Our technologies have outpaced our wisdom. Our conductivity has outpaced our intimacy. Our wealth has outpaced our sense of purpose. The malaise is not just in me or in you, it's in us. And therefore, the solution must also be collective. This connection between addiction, meaning, and transformation reminds me of a previous guest on this podcast, Dr. Robb Kelly, who has devoted his life to addiction therapy. Dr. Robb is very clear that addiction is not just about the substance, it's about the underlying spiritual and emotional wound. He often says that recovery is not simply about stopping drinking or using drugs, it's about finding purpose, identity, and connection. In his work, Dr. Robb emphasizes the importance of identity transformation, moving from shame and self-destruction towards seeing oneself as valuable, loved, and capable of living a meaningful life. That's why his approach to therapy includes not only tools of recovery, but also building blocks of a new way of being. In a sense, Dr. Robb is saying exactly what we've been circling around. Addiction is not only a medical condition, but a spiritual cry for transformation. That word transformation leads me to another set of tools for healing and wholeness. That word transformation leads me to another set of tools and wholeness from the work of Lauryn Axelrod. She offers what she calls the 10 words, a simple but profound vocabulary for living with intention. Attention, acceptance, authenticity, benevolence, balance, contemplation, creativity, collaboration, celebration, and care. Notice how these words touch on all aspects of the SPIES model. Attention and contemplation nourish the spiritual and intellectual life. Balance and care attend to the physical. Acceptance and authenticity open us up emotionally. Collaboration and benevolence ground us socially. And celebration and creativity remind us that life is not only about survival, it's about joy, about flourishing, about expressing the hidden wholeness that Parker Palmer describes. What's powerful about Axelrod's words is that they are not abstract ideals, they are daily practices. They remind us that the antidote to malaise isn't found in one grand solution, but in the accumulation of small, intentional choices. To pay attention rather than distract, to accept reality rather than deny it, to live authentically rather than hide. to balance rather than overextend, to collaborate and celebrate rather than isolate and despair. If Dr. Robb helps us see the depth of addiction and the need for identity transformation, Lauryn Axelrod gives us a vocabulary of daily transformation. Together, their work reminds us that healing is both radical and ordinary, both transcendent and very practical. So, what do? How do we respond to the modern malaise? Here's where the SPIES model becomes not just diagnostic, but prescriptive. Spiritually, reconnect with the practices of meaning, prayer, meditation, rituals, silence, awe. Physically, treat the body as sacred, movement, rest, nourishment, and embodied awareness. Intellectually, seek wisdom, not just information. Study, reflect, question, and integrate. Emotionally, learn to feel, to process, to heal, to embrace vulnerability. Socially, rebuild community, friendship, accountability, shared purpose, and belonging. Each domain nourishes the other. Together, they form a holistic response to anxiety, addiction, and apathy. If DeHard was right, then perhaps even this malaise is not a crisis but a stage in spiritual evolution. Evolution always involves struggle. Breakdown before breakthrough. Perhaps our collective anxiety, addiction, and apathy are the birth pangs of consciousness waking up to its need for depth. Philip Goff's work on panpsychism and consciousness studies reminds us that the mind is not an accident of matter. It may be woven into the fabric of the universe itself. If so, our search for meaning is not peripheral, it's central. This means that our malaise is not the end of the story. It may be the prelude to awakening. Anxiety, addiction, and apathy are real and painful. They are also signals. They point us beyond themselves to deeper hungers for meaning, for connection, for transcendence. Carl Jung saw this in his patients. Dr. Robb Kelly and Gabor Maté see it in those wrestling with addiction. Parker Palmer names it in Our Divided Lives. Viktor Frankl discovered it in the midst of our suffering. DeHard imagined it as an unfolding of evolution. Dr. Robb Kelly reminds us that transformation is possible, and Lauryn Axelrod's 10 words give us a practical vocabulary for daily wholeness. The challenge is for us to listen, to treat our malaise not as a disorder to be medicated, but as an invitation to be answered, to rediscover the hidden wholeness, the SPIES dimensions of flourishing, the evolutionary arc that bends towards greater consciousness. Because, in the end, what we face is not just a mental crisis, it's a spiritual crisis. And until we learn to listen to what our anxiety, our addictions, and our apathy are telling us, we will miss the invitation hidden inside them. Because, in the end, we have a spiritual problem.